Hi, I'm Marco Steinsieck, head of Sephora Media Network, and you're listening to the CPG Guys podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys. Hello and welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. I'm PVSB, and when I'm not co-hosting this podcast, I serve as Partnership Acceleration Lead at Flywheel, a division of Omnicom that helps enterprise brands improve their SEO and SEM, growing their e-commerce business. My co-founder and co-host of the CPG Guys is also co-founder and partner of Think Blue, your key to unlocking your profitability potential. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, they shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Of course, I'm talking about my BFF, my unindicted co-conspirator, the father of music superstars Lara and Ria Raj, and husband to iHeartRadio podcaster extraordinaire Kavita Raj. He's the man known as Shri. Unfortunately, he can't join us today because he has one of those very rare days when his daughter Lara is not in the Cat's Eye house. And by the way, check out the new Cat's Eye documentary that just dropped on Netflix. Shri's life is about to change dramatically because of Lara's participation in Cat's Eye. So just watch it. I mean, he was already kind of the fourth player close in the ranking of the fame of the family, but I mean, the rest of them are taken off. It's just Shri and me in the rear, picking up what's left over. We're just a bunch of CPG Guys schlub podcasters, but we're happy. We like doing it. Before we get to our guest, I want to ask you listening to this podcast, help spread the word about this community we've created in the CPG Guys. Beyond sharing our podcast with your friends and particularly your professional colleagues, if you're using Apple Podcasts or Spotify as your preferred listening program, I can't emphasize this enough. And it's worth you actually, after I say this, hitting pause and then please do what I ask. But please leave us a rating because it helps feed the algorithm that makes us more findable by CPG retail people like you who are looking to be both entertained and educated about this industry. We're very happy that CPG Guys was part of an impressive collective of highly rated podcasts, including CPG Scoop with Reese and Jennifer, and the super red hot FMCG Guys over in Europe with Daniel Frayne and Christine. Links to our podcast, our sister cast, the social media profiles of Shri's daughters, Ria and Lara, his wife's podcast, man, even his 3 cats in their Instagram page that has more followers than the CPG Guys. You can find them all in the digital liner notes of this episode. All right, let's get this conversation going. When you think about categories where brands and retailers have embraced the use of digital to drive consumer engagement, beauty comes immediately to mind. It is at the very top of the list. And one of my favorite conferences, as you all know, to go to is the Consumer Analyst Group of New York conference. And when I see the manufacturers that are in the beauty space and how they have just absolutely leaned into that, I am absolutely amazed. And the truth can be said about retailers in the same space as well. Integrating digital into omnichannel consumer engagement is a major objective within the beauty category. There's no denying that. Sephora, the cosmetics leader, has long been a pioneer in creating and cultivating a strong community of customers, both online and offline, often coordinating its approach on one channel to drive results in another, using first-party shopper data to integrate the retail and mobile customer experience. I mean, who doesn't love the Sephora birthday gift pork that their members receive? Every woman in my family, in my life, absolutely adores it. You know, this kind of activity is particularly relevant for Sephora, where a whopping, I'm amazed at this stat, 83% of in-store shoppers are in the digitally savvy age range of 18 to 49. It really should come as no surprise that Sephora has embraced retail media as an efficient and effective way for brand advertisers to connect with Sephora omnichannel shoppers, using consumption data to build relevant audiences and meaningful performance through its closed-loop measurement platform. Here to share with us Sephora's take on retail media, very excited to have them on board to talk about this and how advertisers can build brands through engaging Sephora shoppers He's an industry veteran with 15 years of experience in retail media. Frankly, even before it was called retail media. I don't know what we called it, but it was media. He now serves as head of Sephora Media Network. Please join me in welcoming to the podcast Marco Steinsieck. Marco, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, PBSB.
I am so happy to have you. And I was mentioned to you before we started the show, I'm so sad that we didn't cross paths in Cannes. We were both there. You did manage to connect with one of us. You did manage to snap a selfie with Shri, which we posted on LinkedIn. But what a great! I hope you had a great event. I certainly did. It was kind of crazy. You know, I would say this about that event, and I'd love your comment before we go any further. But the bill of the event may have been around creativity, but it was clear from everything that was going on around there that retail media had a very prominent role at Cannes. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, I think I wasn't sure if it would be sort of like a boondoggle, but it was the furthest thing from it. It was, probably the busiest I've ever been at a conference, every half an hour, and so many retail media networks there. Along Le Quisette, there were different retail media network beach houses, and then all the channels were there and all the agencies were there. And the discussion around retail media was probably the biggest theme that I observed while I was there. So yeah, no, it was great. And I got to see Shri and have dinner with him and Antibes, which was wonderful, and hear about his, blossoming show business family.
I know it's terrific. Well, we're going to dig a little bit more into the retail media aspect. So before I get to the questions for you to kind of explore what Sephora Media Network's all about, why don't we just start by having you introduce our audience to Sephora and what you do there?
Sure. So I'll give you the high-level intro to Sephora. We are the fastest growing beauty retailer in North America and the industry leader in beauty. Our strength as a brand comes from, you mentioned community, those relationships with our clients and our brands. We're a mission-driven company, and our mission is to build a broader and more diverse definition of beauty where everyone is included. Our tagline is, "We belong to something beautiful." And together with our brands, clients, and employees, we're building that community where diversity is expected, self-expression is honored, and all are welcome. We serve our clients across four major, we call them worlds: makeup, skincare, hair, and fragrance. And we distribute through our mobile and desktop sites, as well as our industry-leading app and our roughly 700 brick and mortar stores and 1,000 or so Sephora at Kohl's stores. So my role at Sephora is head of Sephora Media Network, and I have the honor of leading that team and building that business.
That's great. We're going to dig into all that you talked about in due time. For our audience listening, toggle over to the digital liner notes of this episode. We're going to have links to Marco's LinkedIn page, Sephora's LinkedIn page, and obviously the corporate part of their website so that you can multitask, learn a little bit more. Y'all love to do that as you're listening to this episode, maybe on a Saturday morning, running along the beach in the Jersey Shore, and you want to see, hey, who's this guy I'm talking to? So make sure you do that, check it out, learn all this. That way it's a totally immersive experience, this podcast episode. We're not just about the audio here. We're about so much more than that. All right. So let's get to the questions. Before we dig into Sephora and the work you're doing there, I want to know a little bit more about you, Marco. You have some really great traditional media bona fides. Would love for you to talk about some of those pivotal components of your experience that you think set you up well for the role you now play at Sephora.
Sure. So I'll start at the beginning. I graduated with a degree in international relations from Brown University, and I started my career in humanitarian development. I did that for 2 years. So I was working in the healthcare sector and stationed in places like South Sudan and West Bank and Gaza. So not media at the beginning, but I learned a ton from that experience. And it was a great way to start my career, getting exposed to new cultures and witnessing what life is like for people across the world. And after doing that, I did a pivot, and I actually bartended for a year in Nantucket, which is an island off the coast of Massachusetts, which was a much needed respite and a period of fun for me after a couple of years overseas. And then from there, I got started in e-commerce. So I started my career in retail media at Vistaprint. It was not called retail media at the time. I was part of the strategic partnerships division. And what we were doing was finding products that Vistaprint didn't sell, that small businesses would need, and then forging partnerships with those companies. So Square for Square readers, and Facebook for their ads products, and Google for PLAs, Google AdWords. And so we would build these partnerships. And then in the conversion flow for Vistaprint, we would present our clients, our customers with those products. And we didn't know it at the time, but what we were doing was building non-endemic retail media. And so I did that for about 3 years. And Vistaprint was a phenomenal place to start my career in e-commerce. Very high growth, very data-centric, test, iterate, and invest type culture, the type of place where lots of people could launch A/B tests from their desks. And I learned a ton there. And then while I was there, I met these 3 guys there that were starting this company on the side called DraftKings, and befriended these guys. And one day they told me, "Look, we're gonna make this our full-time job. We're leaving Vistaprint." And when they raised Series A, I went over to lead the business development function for them. I think I was like the 10th employee or something like that. And by the time I left a couple of years later, hundreds of employees. It had become a huge company, went on to IPO, and it was a great place for me to experience a startup and learn about how to manage change and how to quickly scale a business, and the type of people that thrive in that environment. And then from DraftKings, I joined Staples as a part of the team that stood up Staples Media Network. It was 2015, and retail media was just starting to get its feet under it. We launched the on-site business with partners like Hook Logic, which was later acquired by Criteo, and Triad, who did our display business with Google. And then we worked with Google on our offsite business for display and paid search. And Staples was a great place for me. We built a great business, and I went on to lead the team and oversee the design and growth of that organization up until 2022. And then from there, Sephora. I joined Sephora a couple of years ago as the first dedicated retail media network employee. And it's wild to just look back and see how far we've come in 2 short years. We're a 9-figure business. We're a big team. We work across a whole bunch of channels, both on-site and off-site. And our motto is to empower our brands with the digital media capabilities they need to inspire our clients. And increasingly, that inspiration is occurring across the full funnel. We're not just lower funnel in retail media anymore. We have gone way up funnel, and we're going to meet our clients wherever they are in their shopping journey.
Wow, full funnel capabilities. I question whether the funnel even exists anymore. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, because you can enter at any point. I think our common points of connection are we both spent some time living in the land of the late Buddy Cianci. For those of you who are not familiar with the late great mayor of Providence, Rhode Island, I encourage you to listen to some podcasts on his rather colorful and corrupt way of operating the city. But our other connection is I spent some time at CVS, and as I think you know, so many of the people who are at CVS were at one point at Staples and vice versa. There's this little ecosystem between those and TJ Maxx and BJ's. Everybody is kind of like those are, and even Ahold Delhaize, all in the general Boston vicinity, and you can certainly see a lot of cross pollination there. So great. Let's now I have a good understanding of your background, let's touch into retail media. I want your perception why you think retail media is experiencing such enormous growth trajectory. What is it about the market conditions right now that are really enabling this? And why do you think beauty is at the front of this effort?
So I think couple of different angles to tackle that question. The retailer side and the brand side. I'll start with the retailer side. I think this really started when Amazon broke the unit economics of retail. The old model, the traditional model of buy it at wholesale, mark it up, and then sell it at retail, and that's your product margin. That's how you make money. Amazon comes along and they put a ton of pressure on that by making money through charging brands to be on the platform. And then that evolved into a media business, and it put downward pressure on product margins across a whole bunch of industries. So I think Amazon kicked this off, and then early pioneers like Kroger and others in the CPG space, I think, understood that building a media business was going to be important for them to counterbalance some of the other downward pressures on margin, whether it was supply chain or delivery. And they've successfully built media businesses and were able to replace some of that product margin loss with media dollars. And CEOs and CFOs caught on, and companies have just started to. You can see, a new retail media network is popping up like every month. It seems like. So that's the retail side. I think retail media has changed retail fundamentally across a whole bunch of different verticals.
And what's it replacing? Like what's changing in the market that you think that doesn't work anymore for national brand advertisers to get the scale that they want? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah. So then, pivot to the brand side. I think brands have, grown frustrated over time with what has felt like a black box of traditional media channels where they don't get a ton of insight into how their marketing is performing. And with retail media, we're so able to connect the marketing exposure to the client behavior and the transaction. We know these customers very deeply. And so there's a tremendously rich insights that we can glean. At Sephora, one of the things that we can do is we can tell a brand that advertises with us how many impressions of their campaign are new to brand customers versus reactivating customers or lapsed customers. So there's just so much that the relationship that retailers have with their clients is the foundation of what makes this such a performant media channel for brands. And then beauty, I would say, like I mentioned, grocery and CPG is where a lot of the early innovation happened. And there's so much for us in specialty and in beauty to learn from the foundation that CPG laid. There's also a lot that differentiates beauty and specialty from CPG. And I think it's important for retailers to understand those points of differentiation and weave them into the retail media network businesses that they build. So for Sephora and beauty specifically, the margin structure of beauty is completely different than CPG. CPG margins, 5 to 10%, 6%. In beauty, it can be 40% and above. So it's a very different business. And the role of merchandising is very different. At Sephora in particular, our soul is that we're a curator. Merchandising is at the heart of what we do. We find small brands before they blow up. We sign them to exclusive deals. We nurture them. We help them grow. And then they become differentiators for us in the marketplace. And that the building of those relationships early on with brands is a core part of what we do and has to be at the center of the media business that we build.
Brilliant. That is a great description. I absolutely agree with you. I think beauty in particular, because beauty is about the visual appearance in many ways. Obviously, digital media in particular is going to be a very effective channel for communicating. I can certainly see why beauty really stands out. And yeah, grocery may have been the innovation, but where the application has tremendous value is in beauty. So let's get to the department and group you run, Sephora Media Network. Let's start by dimensionalizing it. Would love to know things like the size of the audience, what kind of behavioral and attitudinal data you're collecting that kind of underpins your ability to do targeting. And then for your owned and operated, your site and your mobile app, what are the ad units that you make available to brands We'll get into the offsite and some of the upper funnel stuff, but we'll stick to the owned and operated kind of mid lower funnel. Want to know about the basics of Sephora?
The foundation of the retail media network at Sephora is our loyalty program. We have an industry leading loyalty program, and it's an incredible data set upon which for us to build Sephora Media Network. We have 40 million plus beauty insiders, and roughly 98% of our transactions are from logged in beauty insiders. So this is a tremendous data set for us, and it allows us to not only close the loop, but to get into rich insights and look at our metrics from a bunch of different angles. So we slice our audience in a variety of different ways. Some of the basic stuff like past purchase, lapsed purchasers, and affinity audiences. And then we have some more sophisticated audience offerings as well. In terms of the way that weaves into the reporting, the performance reporting that we give back to brands, I feel like there's a general sentiment right now that ROAS as a performance metric is kind of limited, and it's a super valuable metric, and we have great ROAS metrics that we report back to our brands. But there's questions around incrementality, and there's also questions around customer acquisition. So one of the things that we do is we provide brands with new to brand reporting. So we can tell them, okay, PVSB saw a Charlotte Tilbury ad, transacted on that product, and we can look in our data platform and find out that, hey, this guy's never purchased this product before. This is a new customer acquired for the brand. That's increasingly becoming the most valuable metric for a lot of our brands. And then there's other things that we can do, as I mentioned, like what percentage of your impressions, what percentage of your clicks are coming from a new to brand audience. So how much are you increasing brand awareness through these campaigns? And then in terms of channels for onsite, we have display banners on our desktop, mobile, web, and app. We have sponsored products across search and browse. And, we'll get into offsite, but we work with the majority of major players across display, social, CTV, and audio.
And do you offer both managed service and self-service? What are the options for the brands that are selling through Sephora Media Network?
That curatorial approach that I mentioned around that's the soul of Sephora. That one of the ways that is embodied in Sephora Media Network is that Sephora Media Network is an invite-only program. It is a fully managed service program. We invite brands to participate, and then we help them determine the brand investment levels and the channels that they're going to invest in, and then we manage their campaigns for them. I think there's definitely room for us to evolve in that area moving forward. But for now, managed service has been working well for us.
That blends very well with the in-store experience of consumers who expect that level of assistance and guidance in choosing products. You treat your suppliers the same way and provide them that same level of service. So that's really terrific. All right. While lower funnel is obviously getting conversions a core objective for brand advertisers, upper funnel tactics for discovery and awareness are also very important in beauty. What solutions are you now offering? And I think you mentioned your ability to go into this, but let's go into greater detail. What do you offer brand advertisers through your invite-only retail media network for offsite and even in-store? And what kind of partnerships enable that?
So offsite is actually what we stood up first. It's a huge part of what we do. We work with the majority of the players across search, display, CTV, and audio. And our goal is we want to meet our audience where they are. So offsite is a huge part of that. And our channel allocation strategy for offsite is pretty straightforward. We go where the audience that we want to reach is, and we focus on the audience's formats and channels that perform best for us. So last year in 2023 and this year in 24, our audience focus has really been on Gen Z and DE&I audiences, which supports a larger sort of corporate initiative of increasing penetration into BIPOC, Latinx, and Gen Z markets. So in addressing that audience, we found that video has been the most critical format recently, particularly TikTok and CTV, which are our fastest growing channels. So it starts with the audience. From there, we determine the channels, and it also helps us determine the creative format. So user generated content is huge for us in beauty. I think, people have seen a lot of Sephora influencers on TikTok. That low production, authentic content is what's performing really well for us. And then for CTV, it's a little different. That's where the celebrity endorsements and that high production brand content performs really well. So Charlotte Tilbury had Elton John, YSL had Dua Lipa, Chanel had Timothy Chalamet, and then obviously we've got Rihanna with Fenty and Selena Gomez with Rare. So depending on the audience that we're trying to reach and the channel that we're going to reach them in, that informs our creative strategy.
Marco, if you think of a brand sold through Sephora that could benefit from a celebrity association with the CPG guys, we are totally into that. So we'll be sitting by the phone waiting for the call. Okay.
I don't have pull like that quite yet, PBSB, but I'm working on it.
All right. Well, we can hope springs eternal on our end. I don't know if there's a beauty brand out there that wants a really good before image of some crusty old guys. We are ready. We are ready to transform ourselves. So in any event, I want to remind our audience that we're speaking today with Marco Steinsieck. He is head of Sephora Media Network. All right, so we kind of touched on this in analytics, but what types of performance measurement solutions? You obviously mentioned ROAS, which is return on advertising spend, but what types of performance measurement solutions is the Sephora Media Network offering to brand advertisers? Be it stuff you're doing in-house, maybe you're leveraging third party, maybe you're allowing access via clean rooms. What are you helping provide to brand advertisers so they can be rest assured this is meaningful performance and can start to invest more of their dollars into your really powerful network?
So we provide reporting across all of the individual channels. And then we provide aggregate reporting across the totality of the campaign. So for on-site, we have all the basic platform metrics. So, impressions and click-through and ROAS. It's all at the brand level. It's all at the SKU level. We also do brand lift studies and sales lift studies for on-site. I mentioned that we connect that platform data to our data platform so we can provide richer insights like new to brand customers. And we also do new to world customers so we can determine the LTV growth of an individual user. So if you go from being a makeup only client and now you're a fragrance client, that's a great indicator to us that your LTV is going to expand.
LTV is long-term value, right? That's you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah. So LTV and new to world is a metric that we look at internally at this point. And we're working on how to position it for the market. But right now it's an internal metric. So we know for our users that because retail media is driving phenomenal value for our brands and it's generating incremental margin for Sephora, but it's also generating increased LTV. So that's one of the reasons that we look at it that way.
Terrific. Would love if you could share with us any examples, either masked or unmasked, named or in the witness protection program of brands that have worked with Sephora Media Network to drive success in different areas of the marketing funnel.
Sure. So I can't mention any names. But I'll talk about one campaign from May, and it was a $200,000 campaign in makeup that produced 8,000 new clients for the brand on a $8.26 ROAS. That brand also launched an offsite campaign, and one of the things that we recommend to our brands is to have a full funnel strategy with their campaigns with us. So full funnel across on-site, but also some of our sort of higher funnel offsite channels that produced a $3.80 offsite ROAS. So unfortunately, I don't want to share any brand names, but this was a brand that tapped into a little bit of what we talked about earlier of having an on-site component, having an offsite component, having a component where brand ambassador was used for CTV, and user-generated content was used for TikTok and Meta, and it produced a really strong result for the brand.
You made mention, obviously, of the fact that you have a managed service business. From your perspective, where you've seen success, what does collaboration between a brand advertiser and Sephora Media look like? What should they be prepared to share in terms of their targets, their objectives? What does success look like that will ensure from not just, hey, I filled out a campaign form, to all the way to the end that's going to drive the most success for brands that want to leverage your network?
We have a really strong differentiator in our brand marketing team, and that team is responsible for managing the relationships with our brands as it relates to investments in our business. So Sephora Media Network, retail media is one of the channels in that conversation, but it includes others like sampling and other channels. So the best collaboration is when brands and our brand marketers work together on a sort of full end-to-end. Here's the total investment. Here are our objectives. This is the audience that we want to target. And then we work to get together to create a campaign or a series of campaigns across channels that's going to deliver on those objectives. So I think collaboration is extremely important in generating effective campaigns for Sephora Media Network, and we rely heavily on our brand marketers to help us do that.
What are the kinds of things that we in the industry, and particularly the brand advertisers selling through Sephora, should be expecting from Sephora in advancing this retail media landscape? Without sharing too much, I'm sure you've got some secrets up your sleeve, but what should we be looking for from Sephora and the balance of the year and looking beyond that?
I think it's just to build on some of the stuff that we've talked about. So omnichannel is the future of retail media. Retail media is no longer just a lower funnel activity, and continuing to build solutions to meet the clients where they are, continuing to build solutions that allow us to target specific audiences and differentiate campaigns based on the unique behaviors of those audiences. That's something that we're going to be spending time on. So we're always exploring new ways to deepen our relationships with new channels, whether that's CTV or TikTok, which, as I mentioned, are two of our faster growing channels. And then on-site, the reporting, the ability for us to, again, tie that marketing exposure to an individual client and track their engagement with it and their transaction and inform performance to the brand is super valuable. And so we want to keep looking at ways that we can do that. So omnichannel would be one. I think Sephora and I think just sort of the industry more broadly, where we're headed and where I'd like to see us go is, and another thing that you've mentioned a few times, is collaboration across channels and even retailers. As a retailer, I'd say we have a huge opportunity to collaborate to build a better sector in general. We're not only changing retail with retail media, we're also changing advertising. And so I don't really view, as it relates to retail media, I don't really view us retailers as competing with each other in a negative sense. I think, we can compete and raise each other's game, but we can also work together and learn from each other, particularly within beauty, where we have unique challenges and we have very close relationships across retailers. We compete, but we also know that in the retail media space, ultimately our bigger competitors are going to be the walled gardens. And so we have a chance to work together to build a better advertising experience for our brands and our end clients.
Yeah, I also think that in doing so, the thought around standardization of advertising units, measurement, all of those tools, at the end of the day, it makes retail media more understandable and therefore more viable. And it makes it easier for brands to start shifting their dollars away from traditional mechanisms like linear television and print media into more performative marketing channels like retail media, where, as you mentioned, you get the closed loop measurement with the level of certainty that doesn't require the alchemy of a marketing mix model, as I often describe it. I want to remind our audience, please go to cpgguys.com. You can find all of our episodes there. They are filterable by topics like retail media, loyalty, AI, whatever it is that you want to find the specific curation of among our 385 plus episodes to listen to. Just go there. And if you think you or your company has something to contribute to this ongoing community discussion we have, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Maybe you can join us on a future episode of this podcast. And if you're on cpgguys.com on the navigation bar at the top, or you remember Apple or Spotify, please leave us a rating and write a review. We want to hear your feedback. Tell us, who you want to be a guest on this podcast, what you want us to talk about. We did this for you. We started the podcast to kill some time at the beginning of the pandemic, but really where this has evolved is we want to educate and entertain you. It's the nicest thing we hear from people beyond the other thing people say, which is, you guys are a lot taller than we thought. And I'm like, if we were on a podcast, how tall did you think we were? Whatever. But anyhow, and of course, lastly, I'll just say thank you to the 33,000, can't believe it, followers on LinkedIn who turn to us for education and entertainment. Marco, thank you for taking time out of your day to share with us a whole lot of knowledge about Sephora Media Network. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you and Shri for what you're doing with this podcast. I think it's phenomenal that I know a lot of your podcast episodes have been on retail media, and it's been a phenomenal way for the broader industry to get exposure to what we're doing. And you guys are a huge part of what's generated all this excitement for retail media. So thanks for all you guys are doing.
It's our honor. It's our honor. Great conversation. What I heard today from you is Sephora is not your average retail media network. It's a different kind of retailer, and that means a different kind of retail media network. It's definitely commensurate with the in-store experience. You have an invite-only, a managed service business. You're trying to go where you're in terms of making advertising units available where your consumers are shopping, be it on your owned and operated properties, on streaming TV, on DSP for programmatic. Thank you so much again. Shri, I'm sorry you didn't get to participate in this. I hope your day with Laura is going extremely well. Can't wait for the album to drop in August. Make sure, if you're not following Laura and her sister Rhea on social media, again, toggle over to the digital liner notes of this podcast, and you'll find links to them. If you want to see my daughter, Nadia, today she went to camp. It was dress up day. I'm happy to say we stopped by Sephora yesterday, got 5 different colors of nail polish, and did up her fingers. She's dressed as a unicorn today, no surprise. And you can see pictures of her on my Instagram page as well. Anyhow, thanks for joining us. We look forward to speaking with you on the next episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Goodbye. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.